My back is tight. Turn the meeting. Yosef's coming in. Speaker view. Gallery view. Full screen.
Morning.
Morning.
Morning. Yosef Tzadik, how are you? Okay. Hopefully we'll start right away.
Morning.
Morning. You see, yesterday we said, morning, Joseph. Yesterday we mentioned about having bread on the table when you say Birkat HaMazon. And I said I was going to look it up in the Shulchan Aruch regarding that law. So the Shulchan Aruch says that you should not remove the tablecloth and the bread until after Birkat HaMazon. You should not, meaning don't clear off the table, throw the tablecloth out. Sometimes people use a plastic tablecloth or whatever it is, and then we'll do Birkat HaMazon without leaving any bread on the table. If you want to, if you should go ahead, and the reason is that you want to make it clear that the Chafetz Chaim said that everyone should recognize that you're thanking God for his great kindness and goodness, that he gave food for everybody, that he gave you food. And therefore, if you go ahead and you clean off the tablecloth and you got rid of the food, so it's not clear that what you're thanking God for. And therefore, it's not clear what you're thanking God for. So therefore, that's not appropriate. It has to be clear what you're thanking God for. And one way that'll be clear what you're thanking God for is by leaving the food on the table. So what are you talking for? What are you talking about? Everyone sees you're thanking obviously you're saying grace after meals. Obviously you're saying Birkat HaMazon. Morning, Rabbi. So that would be the morning. That would be the point of leaving the food on the table. That's one idea. Second thing the Chafetz Chaim says in the Mishnah Berurah is that a bracha, usually the blessing is chal, takes effect on something when there's something there. For instance, we have the story by Elisha Shunamis with the story with the oil. From one jug of oil, she kept on pouring and pouring, and the miracle happened that more oil and more oil kept on coming from that jug. So too, when you have something on an item, on an item comes blessing. So when you have something, not on emptiness comes a blessing. Usually on something that's already pre-existing, to that Hashem gives a bracha and makes that greater and better. So therefore, by having something on the table, you left something on the table that also will help bring the bracha. The next halacha in the Shulchan Aruch says that if you do not leave some bread on the table, you don't see a siman bracha. If a person does not leave bread on the table, doesn't see a siman bracha. Why doesn't he see a siman bracha? Why don't you see blessing? Because the Chafetz Chaim writes, because you have to have bread on the table ready to give to a poor person. It's a similar idea that if maybe a person should always have coins or dollar bills in his pocket that if he sees a poor person, he should always have money to give the poor person. I mean, that's what I would suggest based on this halacha, because it says you need to leave on your table bread in order that if a poor person comes, you shouldn't say, I have nothing to give you. And if you left some bread on the table, so I mean, what this would mean that even after you finish, it would sound like from here that even after you finish Birkat HaMazon, you should leave bread on the table. According to this, will we say such a thing? When it says if you don't leave bread on your table, you don't see a simon bracha. And he says, so I mean, the Mishnah Berurah says, see, he doesn't say that the way he sounds like for the Birkat HaMazon, because the Chazal say, because sometimes if you're having a nice long meal, maybe a poor person will come. You have a nice long meal, a poor person will come, and you go ahead and you'll give him from the meal. So if you have bread on the table, so therefore, so you've extended your meal in a certain sense, and therefore, if a poor person will come, you'll be able to have what to give him. And also, there's another idea to show thanks to Hashem on the great kindness that he gave you so much good that you were satiated and you left over. Like, I mean, like a pasuk said, it says in the pasuk, achol v'hoter, you shall eat and you will leave over. That's the blessing. The blessing is that you have extra. The blessing is that you have more, that you have left. That not that you have just exactly and you finish, you have nothing left. The blessing is that you have more. Like we find, what do you say? On the bread, right? We're talking about the bread. Why it's important to leave bread on the table? It's what? Right, because it says right. It's because it says if you don't leave bread, you won't get the bracha. So the bracha. But it could be, I think it says you should use a lot of water to wash your hands when you wash your hands for the bread. I wonder if it says over there, use a lot of water, you get bracha. No, okay, we have to see what it said. It said, we know it says it's a Gemara, I think what I recall says use a lot of water for the Tilat Yadayim. You know what I'm saying? That is said, meaning people should not be stingy in how they wash their hands. We have no problem of water today in the United States of America. You're not sending the guy down to dig to the well to dig the water. So, and you should go ahead and you should make sure you should use a lot of water in order to get your hand. You do a good job of washing your hands. So maybe if I could see the Shulchan Aruch might even bring that down. But that's definitely sourced in the Gemara, what I recall, about using a lot of water. And here we see sourced in the Halacha of leaving bread on the table. And also you're showing the great bracha. Morning, Sammy. You're showing the great bracha that Hashem gave you left. You had water, you had stuff left over. Good morning, Sammy. That's now, and the Shlah, the Chavetz Chaim brings down, good morning, Mike. It's appropriate to give the poor person the good stuff that you have on the table. Because when you give the poor person, let's say you have food on your table, you have what to give him, the better bread, the better stuff, or things that are not as good. When you give him the better stuff, the Chavetz Chaim says, you're showing him that you makablo b'sever panim yafot. It says in the Pirkei Avot, when you greet somebody, you're supposed to greet somebody with a beautiful smile, with a beautiful happiness, that you're greeting him. So therefore, that's how, by giving him the better portion, the better food, that you're showing the poor person that you're really very happy to have him. And the Chafetz, and he says, he praises the communities. The communities.
Good morning, Rabbi.
Morning, Mike. An amazing statement that we have, Mike, over here. He praises the communities that support the people who learn Torah. There was something that went on in Europe. The people who would learn Torah, the guys would be in the yeshiva, and it'd be difficult for the yeshiva to provide for the food of every boy. It's a nice bill, costs a lot of money. So what they would do is that they would go to people's homes in the neighborhood and they would eat at people's homes. And that was a tremendous mitzvah that the host would have, and they took care of them. So the Chafetz Chaim says, I praise those communities that the bachurim, that the young guys learn, that they take care, Sammy, that the families support them by giving them food to eat, and they get two mitzvot. They get, number one, they get a mitzvah of giving to the poor people, and number two is the mitzvah of Torah on their table, because the average bachor, the average yeshiva boy, is poor. And also he's going to talk Torah on the table. And therefore he's going to talk Torah on the table. So it's going to be considered as if he brought the korban when you talk Torah on the table. That is the quote of the Shlah. So that's the story. So we just said the importance of having bread on the table, Mike, when you say Birkat HaMazon. We just mentioned that halacha in the Shulchan Aruch. In the Yalkut Yosef, we could see how the Yalkut Yosef brings it in the Yalkut Yosef in Simin Kuf Pei in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, which I told everyone should get a Yalkut Yosef Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. It's a 2-volume set. He says like this: you should not remove the tablecloth and the bread until after Birkat HaMazon. And if you don't leave bread on your table, you don't see Simon Bracha. Is that clear? Okay.
Yes.
And he says another interesting halacha, that it's better not to take away the salt from the table until after Birkat HaMazon. Because throughout your meal, as long as you're eating your meal, your table is like a mizbeach. Your table is like an altar. And when they brought offerings on the altar, it would have salt on the offering, on the animal, on the offering that on the meat they would bring up on the altar, they would have salt. So therefore, he says you should be careful not to go ahead and remove the salt, ideally until after Birkat HaMazon. Okay. Now, let's continue. Let's see the Gemara. Again, the bottom of the page, we just started at the bottom of the page, but just go back to that line on the bottom of Mem Aleph Amid Beis. What did the Gemara say? The Gemara said 5 lines from the bottom. Mike, you have it? Mem Aleph Amid Beis. Mem Aleph, 41b. Shalu as Ben Zoma. They asked Ben Zoma, why did they say that items that come machmas asuda ain't a time bracha lifnehem v'lo lachrehem? Why do items that come during the meal? I have bread. I said I'm motzi on the bed, and then I have fish, and then I have chicken, and then I have rice. I don't make a bracha on the chicken, the rice, and all because I have motzi on the bread. Why? Why don't I have to say a bracha on the chicken and the rice? Emelahem hoyul pat potrotam. Because since you said hamotzi on the bread, and you're going to say birkat hamazon on the bread, so even though if you eat chicken by itself, without the meal, without bread, you say a borei nefashot on chicken. Eat fish by itself, you say a borei nefashot. But when you eat it, it's part. But since it's part of the meal, the birkat hamazon that you're going to be saying on the bread will cover the chicken too, and the hamotzi on the bread will cover the chicken too. Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. You're thanking God for bread. What does it have to do with the chicken? How does that motzi cover the chicken? The answer is they're all secondary to the chicken. They're all part of this meal, and the meal is a meal of bread. It has bread, and the bread is the basic staple of life, and therefore everything else is considered, second to that, a part of that, and therefore it's considered. You don't need to say another bracha. So then he shoots back. If that's the case, he shoots back. 1 second. See any of the commentaries over here? Now, the Gemara continues. Ihachi, so he said, if that's the case, by yayin nami niftarei pat. The same way that the bread covers the chicken, covers the fish, covers the soup, why doesn't the bread cover the wine? Why do, if I have a meal today, if I was going to have a meal of bread, if I'm having bread for lunch, or dinner tonight, and I'm washing on the bread, good morning, Shmuel Rafe, and I'm having bread for Boker Tov. I'm having bread for dinner tonight. I still have to say a geffen on the wine. The bread does not cover the wine, right? So why? Remember, like we said, don't ever forget. The Shabbat, because you have the wine of the Kiddush, the bracha of the Kiddush contains the bracha geffen. That covers that wine and the wine that you have during the meal, because you plan on having wine during the meal. But tonight, I'm not having Kiddush. So if I go ahead and I have bread, and we know what's the order. The order is you first say a bracha on bread, and then you say the bracha on the wine. Like we learned about Eretz, Chita, Usorat, the order of the 7 Shivat Aminim, bread is first. So why is it that the bread does not cover the wine? And that's the halacha l'maaseh. If I'm going to have wine tonight, I have to have the bread. What's your name again? What is it? If I'm going to have wine tonight, I have to say a bracha on the wine. Right, Mike, right? If you take out some wine tonight, if you're having some bread, you have to say a bracha on the wine. Why? Why does the bread cover? So the Gemara says, now, shiny yayin, wine is different. The goreim bracha la'atzmo. Wine causes a bracha for itself. What does that mean? That wine is unique, that it causes a bracha for itself. What does that mean? So many different Rishonim comment on what the Gemara means. We'll start with Rashi. Rashi on the top line, the goreim bracha la'atzmo. So Rashi says, "V'kama mekomotuba." Many places we have wine, and we say a bracha on the wine, even though we don't need to drink the wine. So what does that mean? If wine would be a beverage that comes as like every other drink, like a soda, like these type of drinks, like water, like orange juice. So that's more of a type of, then it's categorized like every other food and drink. And if it would be categorized, anything that's a food or a drink that's coming for the meal, you have to go ahead and say a bracha. The bread would cover it, because the bread is the king of the food, and the king covers everything that would be a part of being eaten together with it or during the course of that meal of the bread. However, wine is not just a drink. Wine doesn't just come like every other, what's the purpose of a drink? It's to drink. I want to drink because I'm thirsty. I want to drink because I'm drinking the drink as a beverage. I'm drinking, what do you say? Ah, like Mara says, but wine, when you drink orange juice, I'm thirsty. Coffee, I'm thirsty. Tea, I'm thirsty. You're drinking wine because wine is a, even I might not be interested in drinking it, but wine we find comes to the table. We drink wine as a, because of its uniqueness, that we because of wine's special place that wine is, that wine, how wine is looked at, how wine is used, we'll bring wine for a wedding, even though when, and we're going to say a bracha on the wine. Are we really interested in drinking the wine? We're not bringing the wine because we're thirsty to drink the wine. We're bringing the wine because it's such an honorable beverage. So therefore, you go ahead and you make kiddush, or you say the bracha of the wedding and the ceremony. You say it over a cup of wine. So it has a status not just as a drink. It has a status of some sort of independent status that it comes of. Because of that status, therefore, it's not, the bread won't cover it. Bread covers items that are classified in the family of food, the family of drink. Wine is its own family. Wine does not come just as a drink, to drink. Wine comes because of its elegance, because of what it represents, and therefore the bread doesn't have the power to cover the wine, because the wine has this is multifaceted. It's used in a multifaceted way. That is the way Rashi explains. Yes.
Looking at the Lashon of the Gemara, earlier when we were talking about the Berachos, it says that the Lashon uses is to'en, and then over here.
What's the lashon that it used?
To'en bracha
To bracha v'yatzmo.
and then when it comes to yain, it uses the Lashon of boreh.
Right.
So what's the difference?
When it says to own means that it requires, it needs a bracha. Here we're saying the word gorei means this creates a bracha. The meaning the gorei bracha la'atzmo means that the wine creates a bracha. It's not saying it needs a bracha. We know it needs a bracha. But ta'un over there means, says, if I tell you this needs a bracha, that means here is, we know it needs a bracha. We're saying the uniqueness of the wine is that it creates a bracha even when you're not interested in drinking it. That's what it means. Gorem. It's like creates. It's borei. It causes a bracha. That is the explanation of Rashi. Others explain that, what does it mean? It causes a bracha for itself. Look at all other drinks. I mean, if you look other drinks, let's say you say a shahakol, right? Let's say you have, but wine is borei priya gefen. It's not a borei priya eitz. It's not a shahakol. It's something unique that all other beverages don't have such a thing. It doesn't stand out like wine. Wine is the only is the product that stands out, that there's a special bracha for wine, right? If you have apple juice, right, or you have you don't say Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Borei Mitz Tapuchim. Is there such a bracha? Shmuel, is there such a bracha? Borei Mitz Tapuchim. I never heard of such a bracha. But yet there's a bracha on wine, Borei Priya Gefen. So obviously, because wine is such a chashuv drink, it's such an important drink, and therefore that's why it gets its own bracha. That's why the Chachamim, when they instituted brachot, they decided we're going to give a special bracha, unique to wine, Borei Priya Gefen. So therefore, the bracha hamotzi lechem min haaretz will not cover the wine, because wine is a little bit higher level than every other type of beverage, and therefore you can't. The bracha hamotzi will not cover it. Those are two explanations. There's another explanation that I saw that's interesting. That there's the bracha on wine. There's all halachot. If you have one wine, and then they bring you out another wine, and the other wine is as good or better, you have to see the halachot. There's a bracha called hatova hameitiv, right? And also as if you're drinking with other people, not when you're sitting by yourself, drinking with other people. There's certain laws about hatova hameitiv that if you bring out a better wine and you're drinking with people, you make a special bracha on the second bottle of wine. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam hatov v'hameitiv. So that's unique for wine. Shegorem bracha la'atzmo. The fact that wine could cause this extra bracha. If you go out and you bring me another cup of a different type of lemonade or different type of orange juice. I don't make another a tova meitiv on a different type of a better orange juice or a better tea or a better coffee. But you go ahead and you make, even though it's two different brands, they're two different coffees. There's 1,000,001 coffees today, right? How many flavors you can get in coffee or tea today, right, Mike? But you bring you another coffee, another tea. Shmuel's drinking something, right? There's 1,000,001. You don't say I make a new bracha, on another new type, different type of tea. But when you bring wine, and there's other laws, like I said, when you're drinking wine with other people and so on and so forth, and you would go ahead and they brought out this wine because really, if you have both wines in front of you, make the bracha on the better wine, then you will not say a tova meitiv on the second wine. But if the second wine was not on the table, and then you said on the bracha on the first wine, then they brought out the second wine, so that you'll make the tova meitiv. If what I recall, if it is good or even better, so it creates this new bracha. It's unique. Wine is unique. Wine stands out, and because wine is unique, therefore, the bread does not cover the wine. Is that clear? So that's what the Gemara says. The Gemara continues. Rav Huna achal plus tleisa rifte tleisa tlasa b'kava. Rav Huna ate 13 tleisa rifte, 13 breads. There was, maybe 13 rolls or something of bread. These was bread that was patabo b'kisnin. Rashi says, let's say it's bread that was sweetened. The way we'll translate it, sweetened bread, maybe with some honey and some other type of items, that you sweeten it. That if you would eat it by itself, let's say the bread contained other, because how could you eat 13 breads, 13 rolls? It's very sweet, you sweeten it up with other ingredients, not the regular normal bread that you say hamotzi on. It was like a Mizonos type of thing. That what'd you say? Yeah, maybe they put olive oil, maybe they put other. Yeah, whatever they put different things. They made it with Morris. Cheese was within the ingredients. Not that afterwards you throw right. It's part of the ingredients, right? Right. So they went ahead and they, or you want to say like the egg, maybe like the Sfardim. They would not make hamotzi on an egg roll, a roll made with eggs, but meaning egg challah, right? They stay away from egg challah. Generally, they go for water challah because egg challah, right? It's very soft because it has the egg, so they make a mezonot on that, right? But so let's say that was the case, but he ate 13 of them, which is a large amount. Yeah, even if it's sweet, but to have 13. So, b'nei tlasa b'kava. And every 3 rolls, you could go ahead would equal the size of a kav. A kav is a certain measurement. So therefore you get 3 to a kav. That means if he ate 13, so it's a little over 4 times 3 is 12. So he ate a little bit, over 4 kavim of bread. It's a very large of this pasta, of this type of cake or roll or whatever you want to call it, that was sugared up and sweetened up. And v'lo barich, and he did not say Birkat Hamazon after he ate all these. He did not say Birkat Hamazon. What did he say? He was going to say Ala Michya. He's going to say Ala Michya. So the rabbi said, you're making a mistake. Amalei Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman says, Adi kafna. You ate so many rolls because you were starving. You were hungry. Usually people don't eat so much of these rolls, even though they're sweet. Who eats 13 rolls? And this is obviously this is like you ate as a meal. It's not a snack. Usually people eat these things as a snack. Like a cake, you eat cake as a snack. But you obviously, this was eaten you ate an amount like a meal. You had a whole meal out of this. And
is he telling him to do birkat?
And he said you have to do Birkat HaMazon because this would
So
be
does that mean if you have a lot of mezonot, but you're treating that mezonot like a meal? Let's say you're away and you only have mezonot, right? Let's say you have this chocolate bread, like the big rolls of chocolate bread.
Yes.
And you overate them because you're starving and that's the only thing you have to eat. So what are you going to do? You're going to do mezonot and then birkat?
So you would do hamotzi. If you're eating the amount that would be considered a meal, that the average person would, if they would be eating this as a meal, if they would decide that they want to, let's say they don't have normal bread, this is the bread that they have, and they would eat this as bread as a meal. This would be eaten as a meal. That's what if the average person would use this as a meal, that's considered a meal. You see, this guy, he ate 13 and most probably he was still hungry. And therefore, because he wasn't satiated. It seems the idea of 13, he kept on eating. 1, 2, 3, 4. Why does a person keep on eating? And I'm not full. I don't feel full. He never felt full from this. It's like sweet. It's so sweet. He never felt full. So he thought, I never felt full. And it's mezonot. I don't have to do birkat hamazon. So he said no. And the average, maybe you didn't feel full because you were starving. You haven't eaten in a while, and you're starving, or you have some sort of large appetite. Obviously, he was starving. But
is it halacha, Rabbi?
This is what yes, you're going to see this. Yes, this is the halacha.
So we should not have the question about the pizza anymore. When people say, "Oh, pizza is machloket, eat, don't eat, whatever," because it's a meal really for everybody. You eat pizza for lunch, so then you should just do birkat. Or why is it a machloket then?
So you should know to answer Mike's question that I know Rabbi Feinstein said, if you have 2 slices of pizza, you wash. You say Amotzi, and you say Birkat HaMazon. That's Rabbi David Feinstein, Alav Shalom said. Because he says 2 slices. You see, the machloket with the pizza, Mike, is generally not about 2 slices. Because if you have 2 slices, that's an amount that people have as a meal. 2 slices is a meal. But if you have 1 slice, that's where the question is. Meaning, the Yalkut Yosef, Bavadi Yosef would say, that this is this is considered like bread. This is eaten normally as a meal. And he would say, you would say hamotzi even on 1 slice of bread. But the Ashkenazim would say, no, we will not say hamotzi on 1 slice of pizza. I think the machloket, Mike, between the Ashkenazim and the Sfardim is on 1 slice of pizza. Or pizza, do we make hamotzi on pizza? And it could be, Rabbi Vadia might say any amount of pizza, you would say hamotzi. But it just maybe you might not say Natilat Yadayim unless you eat a certain amount. But the major discussion between the Sfardim and the Ashkenazim is whether you would say hamotzi on 1 slice of pizza. Is that clear, Mike? But 2 slices of pizza, Rabbi Feinstein would say, yes, you should say hamotzi because that's the size of it. That's called a meal. That's called a meal. I wonder if many years ago, I think they used to say in the Ashkenazic community, if you would have 3 slices of pizza, it's a meal. But for a number of years now, it's 2 slices, because maybe what's called the normal meal is 2 slices. People don't buy 3 slices of pizza to eat. That's like getting like, that's like the guy here who's starving. Meaning, and by the way, the halacha is it's not about you, the individual. It's more about what is the norm that people have as the Suda. It's not about what is normal that the guy who, see, that would be interesting. The guy who weighs 300 pounds and he's having this type of bread, the sweet bread, and to get him full, a meal for him is much different than the meal for the other guy. It would see from the Gemara that it goes by the average person. Unless you say that there's a separate category that's created for such type of people, because there is such a category for elderly people and for young. And what I recall that elderly people have their own category, some say, because their meal of an elderly person is not the amount that you need for a younger person. A younger person is a different type of meal. You eat more than an elderly person. So that's not something also needs to be looked into exactly, to identify. But the average person, let's say we're not talking about the elderly, and we're not talking about the young kids. Let's talk about the normal adult. What is normal for the average adult to have a meal over, that would be considered hamotzi. Okay, so that's what the Gemara says to him over here. He says, "Ela kol shacherim koven alav suda." What other people convey suda, sarich levarech. You'll have to go ahead and say birkat hamazon. And the Rosh Rabbeinu Osher says that if, let's say, you eat a small amount, let's say you're an Ashkenazi, okay? And the Ashkenazi says you need 2 pizzas to go in and say Birkat HaMazon. But you say, Rabbi, I'm full with 1 pizza. That's my meal, of 1 pizza. So the fact that you're full of 1 pizza, the Rosh says, but that's not considered a normal meal by the average person for the Ashkenazim, and therefore you will not say Hamotzi on such a thing. You will not say Birkat HaMazon. That now, so that's what the Gemara says. Now in the Shulchan Aruch, let's see, says like this. In Simin Kuf Samech Siv Kuf Samech, I'm going to read to you from the Shulchan Aruch. Kuf Samech Sivav, or Siv Zayin. Moni Aaron. He says like this. Pas habor b'kifnin, like this type of cake or type of pie, apple pie. You'll say barim minazonot, and then afterwards you say ala michya. But if you eat, this addresses Mike's point, if you eat an amount that other people, you would eat this as a meal, even if you're not satiated from it, you say hamotzi and birkat hamazon. And if you eat an amount that other people do not make a meal out of, even though you make a meal out of it, you only say Borman Mazonot, because it's about what the average person considers eats as a meal. So that's that point of now in the halacha. There's a lot of discussion exactly how much is this amount of that considered a amount of a meal. Some opinions hold you should learn the halacha from Erev to Chumim. When you make an Erev, that in order to make an Erev, let's say you want to go ahead and walk outside the city on Shabbat, so there's a law you can't go, let's say, 2,000 amot, you can't walk out of a city where there's no houses. Let's say you go to a place where there's no houses, you're outside the city, you have 2,000 amot to walk. But if you go ahead and you put some bread close to the 2,000 amot is about, let's say, 4,000, a little less than 4,000 feet. It's 2,000 amot. Let's say it's anywhere, it could be 3,600 feet, whatever, 2,000 amot. You can walk outside.
Actually, 1.25 miles exactly.
It's not 1.25 most safe. Because
because you know we just had discussion. You know, in Turnsville, there was someone asked about what's the roof, and someone else says it's about 2,000 amot, and they calculated to be about 1.225 because ama it's almost a 1 meter.
Ama, let's say ama is between 18 and 24 inches. So even if we're going to say an ama is 24 inches, so let's say 24 inches is 2 feet. So 2 feet, 2,000 times 2 feet is 4,000. Is 4,000 feet, and when I recall, a mile is 5,000 something feet. So therefore, it's more like 3/4 of a mile. That's what I would say, Yosef, right? 2,000 amot, the largest it could be is 4,000 feet. The largest. There's a good chance it's smaller than that. And therefore, 4,000 feet is less than a mile. You could go over with the person and check it out, but that's what I would say. You hear what I'm saying, Yosef?
They says, wait, I'm just looking up what they wrote down. The kilometer is about 0.62 miles, which is 2 kilometers. Okay, that's mean it's 1.24 miles. The distance from Halbersten, whatever, house, to Spring Shore is 1.2. Calculated are correct by 4 times hundreds of a mile. And before that,
so you should make the calculation, but I'm telling you, in the way I see it, it's less than a mile. So you could look it over.
Yeah.
I'll give you that homework, Yosef.
I checked the ama is 48 centimeters. This is in the Google what it says. 48 centimeters is approximately divided by 2.5 is approximately 15 inches, something like that.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, we would say Amma is more like 18
on Shabbat.
18 to 24.
Generally, in the area of possession by measuring 2,000 cubits, about 1 kilometer in every direction from his place. So it's one kilometer. Okay. It's about one may extend the limit an additional 2,000 cubits in one direction using proceed known as a roof.
Exactly. If you put the bread before the 2,000 amot, then that place becomes like your home, where your bread is, and therefore you could walk from the bread an additional 2,000 amot. If I live over here, if I'm over here, and I want to go, if I put the bread 1,975 amot away from me, so therefore because you get 2,000 amot in all directions. So if the bread is 1,975 amot away from me, so therefore I'm able to be where I am. I'm within 2,000 amot of the bread. I'm 1975 from the bread, and from the bread I can go another 2,000 amot. Is that clear? Now, so how much bread do I have to put down in order to be considered that I'm making a proper eruv techumim? So I have to put the size of bread is a machloket. I have to do it has to be 2 meals, enough bread for 2 meals, and some say that's 8. That's the size of 8 eggs, and some say that's the size of 6 eggs. Now, 6 eggs, the size of 8 eggs of bread. Now, if we say the opinion of 8 eggs would be, that means for 2 meals is the size of 8 eggs of bread. So that means each meal is 4 eggs. And according to the other opinion, each meal is 3 eggs. So if in order to have 2 meals, I I have to put the amount of bread that I would consume in 2 meals to be considered that's my place that I could have 2 meals in that spot. So that's either 2 meals is either 8 eggs, 2 meals is either 6 eggs, 1 meal is either 3 eggs, or 1 meal is either 4 eggs, right? So now, based on that, if once we identified the size of the amount that's considered a meal is 3 to 4 eggs, so that's what will be if I have this type of bread that's mixed with other ingredients. That if I have the amount of either 3 or 4 eggs, so let's say if I have 4 eggs, take that opinion because it'll be more lenient when it comes to. So let's say if I have 4 eggs, therefore some people say stay away from 3 to 4. But if I would have 4 eggs, that would be the size of 4 eggs. That would be an amount considered that people have a meal, and therefore I have to go ahead and say hamotzi on that amount. Now, what is 4 eggs? 4 eggs. Let's say we say 4 eggs is considered. Let's say each egg is like 2 kazaysim. Each egg is 2 olives. So therefore, kazayit is about what is like 27 or 28 grams. So do your math. Let's say 28 grams. So on 4 eggs, you have 8. 4 times 2, you have 8. You have 8 kazaytim, 8 olives. So you have 8 times 26. So what's the math? 8 times 20. 8 times 28. What's 8 times 28? The 8 times 2 is what say? Let's see. That's what it is. The 8 times 28, 8 224. So let's see what he says here. Let's see if my math is how many, you want to, how many grams to an ounce? You want to go check how many grams to an ounce? Is it 27 or 28? How many grams to an ounce? 28.35. So we have. So let's look at the Yalkut Yosef on this. So the way we're saying, if you're going to have the way the math.
Mommy calling you.
What Mara said, based on the math that Mara said, if you have 200, if you have 8 keseitim, 8, we're calculating at 224 grams, that means you would have to say hamotzi on that amount. That's considered an amount that people go ahead and have a meal, make a meal out of. That would be, but I want to just double check if that's in the Yalkut Yosef, if that's the number that he, I know it's definitely in that area.
Rabbi,
Yes.
but I just want to go one step back.
No,
You have
Billy,
to bless a motzi lechem on every amount of bread that you eat, right?
Any amount of bread you eat, you say motzi lechem min haaretz, correct. But to say Birkat Hamazon, you have to have a kazayit.
Right. Okay. So a pizza, for example, when you mentioned about the pizza before, is it considered kazayit, one pizza?
One pizza, meaning if you're Ashkenaz, we say 1 ounce kazayit. Let's say kazayit is 1 ounce, right? We say 1 ounce of pizza for Ashkenaz will not be enough to say hamotzi on 1 ounce if you're Ashkenaz.
I see.
Because we don't look
Birkat
at
Hamazon.
What do you say?
The Birkat Hamazon.
I'm saying, right, 1 ounce of pizza for Ashkenaz, you say mizbermin and mizonot, and you say an ala michya.
Okay.
If you have 8, if according to this, if you would have, and now, so according to this, we're saying if you would have 8 ounces of pizza, according to this opinion, then that will go ahead and say hamotzi. But again, but we're not. But the halacha, we're not going to say that. We're going to say 2 slices. We're going to look at, because there's 3 opinions we're going to talk about today. Exactly what's the amount that requires you to say hamotzi. The first opinion that we said, if you would have let's say 8 ounces of this pizza, 8 ounces of the cake would require you to say hamotzi. 8 ounces of apple pie.
But
right?
why not? But why not for every? If it's a motzi, if it's five, if it's one of the 5 ganim, why don't say a motzi every time that you? Why's the amount
Very
important
good.
when you say a motzi? A motzi is bread.
Right. The answer is this is not traditional bread. This is not eaten as a meal. This is eaten generally as a snack. Meaning, if I have an apple pie, I eat apple pie, or I have a donut, Entenmann donut, I eat it as a snack. I don't eat it as a meal. It's not a meal food. It's a snack food. Therefore, it's not lechem that we say hamotzi lechem min haaretz is a special bracha for things that's a meal food, that's eaten as a meal. And therefore, but if I eat enough of the snack that I ate so much of the snack that I ate it as a meal. Now I turned the snack into a meal. I could turn a snack into a meal if it's from the 5 grains, like you said. It's from the 5 grains and I made it into a meal. So then, but he says that's only if this is baked in the oven, the Yalkut Yosef says. But if you have dough that you cooked or you fried, it's not called bread. That's not called bread if it's cooked or fried. Even if you have a meal over it, you'll say a mezonot and ala michya. So that's what the Yalkut Yosef says. It's only when we're talking about baked products. A baked product, you baked in the oven, baked a nice cake, but you ate an amount of cake that you turned it from a snack into a meal. This would be an amount that a person would have a meal over. This would be a full meal of cake. If you eat it as a meal, how much would he eat? How much cake would you eat as a meal? That will create it into a hamotzi. So the first opinion says it's about the size. It's how much. We should learn from Erev Techumim what's called a meal over there. One meal is called 4 eggs. So 4 eggs. By the way, the Yalkut Yosef says 216 grams, because my math, I want to do the math this way. If you do 8 times 28, do the math that way. 8 times 20 is 160. Yes, you're right. There's 2. So I don't know where did I get 56? Yes, I have to see what he says. He says if you have more than 216 grams, and he says it's better to be stringent. If you have more than 230 grams, then you should say hamotzi. If you have more than 230, so that will answer you that the 200, because you said how much is in a gram? You said 28 point what? You said 28 point. So if you do the math, if you want to do the math of 28, what was that? How much was it? Was an ounce? 1 ounce is how many grams? We'll do it again. 1 ounce is 28.35. So now do 28.35 times 8. 226.8. So he says if you would have 230 grams of you would say hamotzi. So that's the first opinion. The second opinion, and that's the opinion of Ovadia Yosef goes on. But the other opinions, here's the laws of brachot. Okay, Rabbi Binyamin Force. It's an Ashkenazic sefer. So he brings other poskim that say that this meal that we speak about by Erev Techumim, that's considered a small meal for a poor person. But based on the man that they had in the desert, it would come out that a meal would be much, much larger. Tremendous amount of eggs would be considered a meal. And therefore, you would have to eat cake in the volume of 21 eggs, which is a tremendous amount. Who eats 21 eggs? The volume of 21 eggs of cake in order to be considered a meal. That is the second opinion. So according to that opinion, it will be rare that you would make hamotzi on on something that starts off as a mezonot, to turn the mezonot into a motzi would be very rare. The third opposed, and they write as most poskim, which he writes here, the Mishnah Burak, quoting Shibli Aleket, the Gra, the Chaya Adam, the Aruch HaShulchan, and Igrot Moshe, or Moshe Feinstein, most of the Ashkenazic poskim reject both these opinions. In their view, the amount of 4 eggs, which is, let's say, 8 ounces, is too small to be considered a meal. While the amount of 21 eggs, this is on page 247 of Yom Kippur Sefer, or 21 eggs is too large to be regarded as a minimum requirement. They say that a meal is measured in terms of the quantity that is generally eaten during the course of a full meal. One who eats a quantity of cake equal to the amount of bread that one would generally eat for dinner if no other foods were available. If you would eat a quantity of cake that equals the amount of bread that you would eat for dinner, if there would be no other foods available, you would say hamotzi. And the amount is measured in the normal eating habits of each country. Meaning the United States is one measurement, maybe the Soviet Union, they eat a little less than us in America. We are a little more, our weight is higher maybe in certain countries than other countries. So based on the country that you're in, what's considered, morning Avi, what's considered the normal amount? Now, he says interesting, the authorities mention a morning and evening meal. Good morning, Isaac. This certainly refers to the eating. On our breakfast, he says, cannot be considered a full meal, since many people eat only a bowl of cereal or a Danish and a coffee. Indeed, even our lunches are often hardly worth mentioning. So he wants to say an amount of a meal is usually in terms of a dinner. What would you eat at dinner? How much bread would you eat if you have bread by itself at dinner to be considered, and then you would say, if you would have enough cake or enough, so that would be considered you would say hamotzi in such a case. So that's what comes out regarding these halachot. And we'll continue tomorrow. We'll see more tomorrow, more about this discussion. So we just have to, now I think Moshe Feinstein also, I remember he wasn't happy. If you go to a kiddush on Shabbat and they serve cake and they serve kugel, cholent, kishka, and all the, and you're having a meal, you're eating like a full meal, and you're eating the cake, and you're eating enough cake as you would if you would have been bread. This is how much bread you would eat at your meal, and you're eating that amount of cake. So he had issue that maybe you're using the cake like bread, and maybe maybe you should wash and such a thing. I'm just saying, I don't think Rav Ovadia Yosef would say you would wash and such a thing, but he has this concern that if you're using the cake like bread, so even if you didn't have, and let's say, and especially I saw the Aruch HaShulchan says, if you're going to go ahead and have, let's say 4 ounces of cake, that's not so much. 4 ounces of cake. Sorry, 8 ounces of cake. Sorry, 8 ounces of cake. 8 ounces of cake. How much? It depends how much. If people eat a nice amount of cake first of all, according to Rav Ovadia Yosef, 8 ounces would require you to wash. If you would eat 8 ounces of the cake. So you got to be careful. You go to these kiddushas, they have so much cake, you have a large amount within a certain amount of time, then maybe you have to wash on that cake. Be careful. It's not. Also, it'll be good on your diet not to eat so much cake. Have a great day, everybody. All the best to everybody. See everyone. Thank you. We'll see everyone tomorrow, hopefully.
Rabbi.
Rabbi, you too. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Have a good day.